Hey, hi everyone. My name is Yash, and today I welcome you back to my YouTube channel Crazy Cloud. This is the eighth video of LWC learning series, and in this video, we'll be talking about the conditional rendering in LWC. So, if you haven't watched the previous videos yet, I can provide the link in the description box below, so you can go and watch them first. So, before getting any delay, let's get started on the conditional rendering, right? So, today's topic is conditional rendering. So in LWC, what conditional rendering means that suppose we have two buttons, or let's say suppose we have two buttons. What do we want? That there is a boolean variable which is button. So if the button value is true, then show this button. If the button value is false, show this variable. So this is how conditional rendering works. So in simple words, what we can say that onto basis of some conditions, onto basis of some conditions or values, we can we can show different user interfaces, right? So suppose we can show four buttons to a user if the value is true, or four, or let's say two buttons if the value is false. So on to basis of some conditions, we can just render different user interfaces, different UIs, right? So in any other language, if you have worked on C++, Java, Python, any language, we have always used if else, right? So if suppose we use like if name equals to Yash, then execute this logic, else execute this logic, right? So this was the backend languages. We always used if else in any other languages. But have you ever wondered that whether HTML can also be whether HTML can also be rendered due to rendered basis of some conditions, right? So today what we'll do in LWC, in our LWC component of and in HTML file, what we'll do, we'll use some if else. But here these if else do not work like this, right? Here we what we do is we just compare two values, right? One variable and another value. We compare like this: if the name is Yash, or if the name is something, if the name is something, do this operation, execute this task. But in HTML file, what we do is whether name contains any value or not. There are only two things: whether the name contains any value or not. If yes, then execute this logic. If no, then execute this logic. So here in HTML file, we cannot compare like this, that if the name is Yash, we cannot specify like this. All what we can do is all we can do is whether the name variable have any value, yes or no. If yes, then execute this logic. If no, then execute this logic. Not only with the name or string variable, whether you have an integer value as well, we can do same thing. Whether you have a boolean variable, if the value is true, then do this. If the value is false, do this. Suppose we have a list which consists of some records. Let's say we have a list of account. So if the list is empty, which means it is false. If the list contains some records, which means it is true. So let's do one thing. Let's create a LWC component and see how it works. What we'll do is we have a lightning card here, and here we have a button. Click. So onto the load of the component, what we'll do, we'll just declare a variable, four variables, right? One is the boolean. Another one should be string. Then we have integer, right? And let's say three variable. So first, onto the load of the component, we will set the default value as false. For string, we'll keep it null, and integer we'll keep it null again. On to click of the button, what we want, we'll just change these values. It will make it true. On to click of button, right? We'll make it true. Let's say in string variable we can assign value Yash, and in integer we can assign value 5. So what we'll do, if the boolean variable is true, then execute this logic in HTML file. If the, let's say, string variable have something, assign this, execute this logic. If the number integer value variable have something, assign, execute this logic. So let's go to the conditional rendering, and here we have already we have a, okay, so we have created a conditional rendering component here into our LWC like we just created a LWC of with name conditional rendering, right? Here we'll just declare the variable as, let's say, the boolean variable is bool, which is false by default. Another we have a string variable, let's say name, and it has nothing in it. And let's say num, which is just num, right? Now in template, what we will do, we'll just create a lightning card, lightning, lightning card, and we'll give it title as conditional rendering, and icon name, sorry, name, the name should be, let's say, standard count, and class should be SLDS, SLDS card underscore body underscore inner. Okay, now we have a lightning lightning card, and into this lightning card, what we'll do, we'll just create a normal button, lightning button, lightning button, and label would be click, and would say variant would be brand, and on click, on click of this button we'll call a method, and we'll create that method into handle click, like we'll create this method our into our JavaScript file. Now what we will do, so see, onto the load of the component, the bool value would be false, name do not have anything, and number do not have anything. But onto the click of this button, onto the click of this button, what we will do, we'll just call the handle click method, and inside this method we'll just make this boolean variable to true. We'll assign something into this name, and we'll assign something into num, right? Now in LWC, in the HTML file, what we'll do, here is a different syntax. What we were doing into the normal programming languages, we just use if and then bracket, but in HTML it do not work like this. In HTML, what we can do, we can just use template, sorry, template with LWC colon if. This is the if statement in LWC HTML file. Inside this, which variable should it should check, right? So suppose for now I am just using this bool variable, right? If bool, right? If bool, then let's say show the value is just bool, right? The same way, or let's say what we can do, what, let's create template LWC else if, right? else if, which is name, right? Or let's say first only work on this LWC if, and later we'll see LWC else if as well. In this, we'll show the name, and in template LWC if, we'll use num, and here we'll show num, right? But what we have done is initially only lightning button will be visible onto the UI, because these things, these values would only be visible if and only if these variable contains some value, right? See here, note, if you note, here we are not using any comparison whether the name is yes or not. No, it does not like, it does not work like this in HTML files. What we do here is we just check whether the name variable do have anything or not, nothing else, right? No matter what the value is, whether the value is let's say Yash or let's say Crazy Cloud, it doesn't matter. If it contains some value, it will be true. If the name contains some value, it will return true and show you this name value. If it contains some value, it will show you this value, right? So initially these variables do not have anything, right? These are null and this is false, so it will not show these three variables onto the UI. But as we click on this button, handle click will get called, and in handle click we are just assigning these values to this component, these variables, and then onto the UI these values would be visible. So let's deploy this component first. After this, we'll learn LWC if, else if, and else as well, right? Okay, now UI and edit page, and here let's search for conditional rendering and put this component, save, go back. Okay, now see, it does not, it is not showing any values to us, right? But in code we have written some values, but these values should only be visible whenever these variables should have anything, whenever these variables will have anything inside, uh, inside it, right? So let's click on this button and see true, Yash, and 5. If you can see here, after clicking this button, we got the true, we got Yash, and we got 5. Why? Because after clicking the button, we just assigned the values to these variables, right? And as soon as these variables do have something, it will show the value, correct? So this was LWC if. Let's say how LWC if else or else if these things works. So what we can do, let's create three variables, let's say var1, and for now this is false. Three boolean variable I'm creating just to make you understand. Variable 3, and for now all these three are false, right? And let's say we'll create one more button, handle click 2, will call, and here we will create one more button, handle click 2. Handle click is for these templates, but now we are taking one more example, that's why I've created a handle click 2, and let's say it is base, correct? Click, click me, right? Now What we'll do is if and else. So how it works, let me show you. If, else if, and else. And we have three variables, where1, where2, and where3. So what we are going to do is, if where1 have something, if where1 is true, if where1 is true, then we'll show Yash. If where2 is true, like it will go, if first it will check for where1. If where1 is false, it will go to else if. Else if will check for where2. Else if will check for where2. If it is false, then it will go to else, right? So if where2 is true, we'll show, let's say, Krazy, and where3 is true, we'll show cloud. Correct? So now, on to click of this button, we'll just let's say where1. We'll make this where1 as true and rest are false. Correct? Now let's deploy this. No, we just need to add here as well. Let's say it is where1. If where1 is true, then we'll show Yash. If where2 is true, sorry. Now what we'll do? Where2, where3. If variable 1 is true, we'll show Yash. Else if, so that it will not go down. Hmm. Here, in this case, see, this is another example. Right? Don't get confused over this. Right? This was for only if conditions. Now I'm just explaining if, else if, and else. So if variable 1 is true, it will the execution will not go down. If variable 2 is true, like suppose if it is false, it will go for variable 2. Else if suppose it is also false, then it will go to else, right? So onto the load of the component, all the three variables are false, so we should not be able to see anything. Let's say if variable 2 is true, then we'll crazy, else we will just use cloud. Okay. So initially, onto the load of the component, all three values are false, where1, where2, and where3. But onto the click of button, we are just making where1 as true. Rest are still false. So we should only be seeing Yash, not Crazy Cloud, right? So let's deploy this. Else directive cannot, oh, sorry, else cannot have anything. It is just else. In the normal programming language also, we do not, gives anything to the else. Now go to our application, refresh this page. Let me hard refresh this page. Hmm. We have cloud because, okay, so else works like this. See, whether the value is true or false, it will always get executed. Let's remove this, save, and deploy this, and hard refresh this thing. Okay, so currently we do not have any value. Onto the click of this button, we are just making where1 as true. So ideally, Yash should be visible, not Crazy, right? Click me. Only Yash is there, right? Now let's do one thing. Let's make this where to is true, where one is still false after clicking this button, and refresh this page. Now onto the click of this button, we are just making this where to as true. So ideally, this should get false and yes should not get printed, and then the execution will come onto this template. And if this is true, the crazy text would get printed. So let's click this button and see crazy. Earlier it was printing Yash, but now it is printing crazy. Correct. So this is how LWC if, LWC else if, and uh, LWC else works. So if you have any doubt regarding this video, you can ping me on LinkedIn. We can have one-to-one chat, or also you can give any queries or any answers below this video. If you have any question, you can just ask me below this video only. So until then, keep practicing, guys. So see you in the next video.